Welcome to Unforbidden Truth. I'm Andrew. On this week's episode, I'll be speaking with convicted murderer Deryl Dedmon. On June 26, 2011, 47-year-old James Craig Anderson was murdered in Jackson, Mississippi by Deryl Dedmon and a group of his friends. According to authorities, Dedmon and his friends robbed and beat James Anderson, then proceeded to run him over. The day of the brutal attack, Deryl and his friends were drinking in Puckett, Mississippi. According to a lawyer representing one of Deryl's co-defendants, the group decided that they were going to buy beer in an area where liquor stores were open late that night. According to law enforcement officials, Deryl led his friends to Jackson, Mississippi with intentions to harm black people. The group talked about collecting bottles to throw them at unsuspected victims. The group split up in two vehicles. They drove to a predominantly black area of Jackson, Mississippi. According to the prosecution, the first person the group saw was James Anderson, whom they thought was trying to break into a vehicle, when he really had lost his keys and was trying to get into his own vehicle. One witness to the crime reported that one of the perpetrators yelled white power during the beating. The group split up in two vehicles after the beating. Deryl was driving one of the vehicles and ran over Mr. Anderson before he left the scene. After driving away, he bragged about the beating and running him over. A few days after the attack, Mr. Anderson passed away in a hospital. Shortly after they left the scene, they were arrested. Deryl was charged with capital murder. The FBI opened up an investigation into the crimes as a civil rights violation. On September 20th, 2011, a grand jury indicted Deryl Dedmon on charges of capital murder and a hate crime. He was sentenced to 50 years in federal prison, and once that sentence expires, he'll begin serving 2 consecutive life sentences in Mississippi. Deryl's co-defendants were charged with conspiracy and a hate crime. Their sentences ranged from 4 to 18 years in federal prison. Here's my interview with Deryl Dedmon.
This call is from
Deryl Dedmon.
an inmate at a federal prison.
All right, let's start out with talking about where you were born.
Guess I was born in Brandon, Mississippi. I pretty much had it my whole life.
Do you remember what your first positive memory was as a child?
It'd probably be fishing with my great grandmother, and that's probably my first positive memory.
Do you remember what the first negative memory was as a child?
Getting in trouble for kicking somebody with my boots when I was around 3 or 4 in preschool.
Did you suffer any type of abuse or trauma growing up as a child?
None. No abuse.
No abuse. What about trauma, whether it be car accidents or head injuries or anything like that?
Never been no accidents or anything.
Did you engage in any criminal activity prior to the crime that you're in prison for?
The only thing I had prior to this was phone harassment phone call, but other than that, that's it.
Being that you're convicted of a hate crime, did you grow up with any anti-Semitism in your life, whether it be at home or school or around you, or media influence or anything like that?
I have to say at school.
At school, did you tend to gravitate towards people that were a little more on the, prejudicial side, or did you just hang out with the wrong crowd? What happened at school?
I think I just hung out the wrong crowd because I was so pressured into being cool that I had to let some of my beliefs sway away just so I could be accepted.
Did you ever get at any type of altercations at school with anybody of, African Americans or Hispanics or anything like that?
Nope. Never been in a fight at school.
So, throughout your trial, prosecutors alleged that you and others would harass African Americans in the area, primarily homeless and or drunk people. Is there any truth to that?
There is.
How often would that happen?
It all started because one of my co-defendants' moms needed money because her rent was due. So he had this bright idea of, let's go to Jackson and find people to essentially to rob. So that's how he ended up in Jackson, and then it just became something more than we intended it to be. Whether it be black people or white people, we just end up just fighting them for, I guess, essentially fun.
And how many of you were there that would do that?
It would just depend. Sometimes different people would go, because also that's where, with the
And the friends that were with you when you guys would harass these people, were any of those the co-conspirators in the case that you're in prison for?
Yeah, some were. Some didn't get charged.
And were you ever charged for any of the harassment with these people?
Yeah, they pretty much put everything into one charge.
And this was before the murder, correct?
Yeah, this is before.
And did you ever serve any time or go to juvie or jail or anything like that for that?
No, they never knew any of this happened until Mr. James Craig died.
Let's get into the crime that you're in prison for. On June 26, 2011, and you and four of your friends murdered 47-year-old James Craig Anderson in Jackson, Mississippi. And after the FBI conducted a high-profile civil rights investigation, it led to 10 indictments, and his murder was classified as a racially motivated hate crime. The night of the murder, did you have any conversations in the car prior to the incident taking place about what was going to happen?
And it all started at the party before we got in the truck to go over there. I think 2 nights prior to that, we went to a club with a group of my friends called the Horseshoe, and over there I was robbed. And so that night at the party happened at Puckett, that's one of my co-defendants' parties. A guy came up to me and wanted to go to Jackson because he'd never been with anybody who'd done it, and he kind of wanted to show off. So it was like, let's go to Jackson, and we ended up going. But it was talked about there, they wanted to find somebody to abuse.
So was it strictly to abuse or kill?
Just to abuse.
Can you walk me through what led up to the murder of Mr. Anderson? What all took place on June 26, 2011?
Like I said, people wanted to go to Jackson, and so I got in my truck, and 2 girls, 2 of my co-defendants, they were following me, and they're a separate vehicle, and then there was 3 people in a separate Jeep, and we're all going to meet up in the town of Brandon. So on the way there, I went all the way to Texaco gas station, and 3 guys were in the Jeep waiting for me there. And then I guess the girls, they got lost because they had a stop on the side of the road for something, and I said I was going to wait on the girls. The 3 guys in the Jeep, they left and went to Jackson. So I stayed back in Brandon for about 30 to 45 minutes till they finally showed up. And then at this time, I honestly didn't want to go all night, so I told them, let's just stay here and just do something else. But they're pretty intimate that they wanted to go to Jackson. So I said, okay, so we got in the truck. And on the truck ride there, I guess one of my co-defendants was texting one other co-defendants because my phone was dead at the time about where we were at. And so finally, they told us we were there at the Metro Inn, and that they found somebody. So when I pulled in the Metro Inn, they were talking to Mr. Anderson, and he said he locked his keys out of his truck. So when we got out of the truck, I walked up over there. I started to talk to Mr. Anderson, and I actually tried to help him get back in his truck, try to find a Slim Jim or a coat hanger to unlock his truck. And when I was talking to him, somebody went up to him and punched him and knocked him on the ground. And at this point, that's when I got on top and I started hitting him also. And when I got up, I went back to my truck. And when I got back in my truck, we went to leave. And as I turned out the Metro Inn, he was walking. He just got up, I guess, and was walking towards the truck. And that is when, unfortunately, I hit him and he passed away.
What was running through your mind during the commission of the crime?
Oh, man. So many other things that, nothing good. I was just trying so hard to approach these girls, and I guess that, obviously did it all the wrong way. But I was so
After all was said and done, how did you feel?
I felt devastated when they arrested me that same night. I was on the way back home. I honestly didn't know that I even killed anybody. I thought when they arrested me, I was worried about getting a DUI. I was hiding beers under my seat because that's what I was worried about. I didn't know until after I got to the police station and they interviewed me, then I knew the seriousness of the situation. I just felt devastated. I never intended nobody to die.
So you were arrested that night because it's been reported that you were arrested 10 days after the crime.
Oh no, I was arrested that same night on the way. As soon as that happened, we went right home, and I was arrested on the interstate going back within 15 minutes. It was on June 26th. That was my initial arrest. I got out on bond 3 days prior to that, and I was out for 7 days. I got rearrested again on July 6th.
So when you were out for those 7 days, what was running through your mind then?
I mean, honestly, I couldn't stop crying because I really didn't mean to hurt anybody or kill anybody, and I was devastated.
After the trial took place and the victim's family finally had a say, how did it make you feel that the victim's family had asked that you and your co-defendants be spared the death penalty?
I mean, it's a good feeling. You know, in my speech I gave to the family, I asked for them to forgive me. I felt like that was a little way of forgiveness that they showed me was sparing my life. Even though, I mean, if that was my family member, I don't know if I would have been so forgiven.
You're charged with the murder, and it's labeled a hate crime, and you're ultimately convicted in both state and federal court, correct?
Correct. I got 2 consecutive lives in state and 50 in the federal government. I guess at first, I was prepared for it in a way. Because in the county, one of the guys told me to say, you didn't really prepare yourself for what might have coming. I tried to do the best I could the 9 months before I took the 2 life sentences in the state. So, I mean, I was, of course, devastated, but I guess I was just numb to the fact that this is just how it's going to be for the rest of my life.
So you've been incarcerated going on 10 years now. What do you do to preoccupy your time?
I'm heavy into exercising, going to the chapel, just helping other people see their mistakes and try to help turn their ways for going back to the streets and being the same thing, because so many people are just lost. It's like they're living the movie Groundhog Day all over again. They leave here and they go home and they come right back, and really I just try to help other people best I can.
Being that you're convicted of a hate crime, have you ever had any trouble with any inmates in there, primarily Hispanic, African American, Asian, etc.?
No, not really. I haven't. I guess when I first get to an institution, everybody's kind of wary of me and what might happen. I know when I first got to my first federal prison, all the guards who were black actually pulled me to the side and talked to me. And they weren't very nice, to say the least. But inmate-wise, not really.
I noticed during your court proceedings, you and all your co-defendants, they made it a point to march you in with African American, the attorney general and the marshals and everything were African American, and I think they made it a point, which I think was very interesting. I don't know if you guys noticed that during the whole time, but when I read that, they said that they had made it a point to make sure all of them were African American.
Yeah, Judge even said in his speech, he said you're being led in by 2 black U.S. Marshals, black U.S. Attorney General, black President, black Judge, black Prosecutor. And they very well made it a point.
Did that piss you off at the time?
Yeah, it did, because it seemed like they wasn't really concerned with what was actually going on. It was more concerned with making it a show, nothing but a circus.
Do you think you got a fair trial at the time?
think that I definitely 100% deserve prison time because somebody did die, but not as much as they gave me. They definitely went way overboard because at first they had it just like a regular murder, which could have been dropped down to manslaughter, but the state prosecutors kind of railroaded me and upgraded to capital murder for no reason, just so they can get more time out of me.
What do you think the appropriate sentence should have been in this case for not only you but everybody else involved?
For me, 25 years, 25 to life. Because if you can't change your life in 20 years and something is mentally wrong with you, I think that, if you serve 20 years and get out there and mess up, you definitely deserve to be in here. But the others, I really don't think they really deserve too much time. They really didn't do nothing wrong. Everybody knew what we were going to do. They knew that we were going to harass black people. But that much time for someone getting 20 years when no one even died, well, they didn't kill nobody. It's just too much.
Do you still have the same anti-Semitic views these days as you did 10 years ago?
I don't, not at all. I guess it's really changed it. But it's also, you see the racism on both sides instead of just one side.
What do you think changed that?
Well, I never grew up anti-Semitism or racist or any way. I just let people around me influence me to do these crazy, extreme things. So, it was really a wake-up call to me getting arrested, realizing what I did, because I was out there and it had no consequences to my actions. I just go out there and get drunk and find black people and fight them for no reason. But I think in prison, it's a completely different atmosphere. You can't just go around and do stuff like that. And I've seen how the white people are in here, and they're nothing like I want to be. If that's how I was on the street, then, I apologize because these people are crazy.
When you first got to prison or jail or anything like that, did you ever belong to a prison gang or, the skinheads or the ABs or anything like that?
No, not at all. Like I said, I see a lot of dropout prisoners, and their view on life is horrible. I would never want to be a part of any of that.
Before we conclude this interview, is there anything you would like to say that we haven't covered yet?
Not really. Just what I did was, is extremely wrong, and I definitely deserve to be in here. And I just hope that people don't make the same mistake as I did. Actual sentencing guidelines on how they treat people and treat everybody equal. That was my interview with Deryl Dedmon. Go check out my patreon.com/unforbiddentruth. You get access to additional exclusive interviews, as well as access to a virtual true crime gallery, and much more.